It's been 1 year since the release of Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, and it stands as my favorite game of 2025. I still wholeheartedly agree that Expedition 33 edges it out for Game of the Year, but KCD2 feels like a game made specifically for me. Now, it's been a whole year of folks casting it aside as that boring night game, a whole year of it somehow losing RPG of the Year, a whole year of people not even putting it on their top 10 lists, let alone even acknowledging it. And after 1 year, I want to go back and revisit KCD2, but its hardcore mode, a mode made entirely to make the life sim significantly more realistic, and I think it's about time to hop back into KCD2 to see why it's one of my favorite games of all time. Without a doubt, if this game had a retention graph, it would be like one of my videos. 66% of the people not making it past the intro. This game is slow and dialogue heavy, but its tutorial and intro to this world is probably like thick sludge to anyone unfamiliar with it.
You have to try. You have to care.
Now, I love this, but if you've watched any streamer try to play this game, they basically get to the portion where Henry's let out of the stocks, save the game, and never return. This long-winded setup is to say, I'm gonna skip the intro for this playthrough. Instead, we start this run where everyone stopped, right after being let loose from the stocks. My goal with this run is simple. I want to reacquaint myself with this world, but also highlight why I love it so much. And to do that, my Henry is going to be a bastard. Well, more than he already is, to be fair.
Mind your own bloody business.
This will ideally highlight the crime systems in place, and there are a few other aspects I plan to touch on as we go forward. So, Evil Henry is let out of the stocks, and to make things even more hardcore, I'm throwing away all of the items I've gathered to this point. So, I'm naked, have no source of income, no weapon to threaten with, and when confronted, will always lean aggro. So, as we are set free, I begin circling Troskevitz for easy options for both clothing and free loot. As much as I love this as a life sim, there are plenty of hanging and folded clothes everywhere that I can't nick for whatever reason. I do stumble on a house full of apples and take my fill. I remain naked and afraid, but a nice beggar in town generously hands me a lockpick. This is surely a good omen. I don't think I'll be able to make a heist in the most densely populated town on the starter map, so I make my way southwest to Samin. This is where the hardcore mode's debuffs begin to take play, so let's take a look at those now. Hardcore mode has a few limiters to make the experience more challenging, but has 10 additional debuffs that you can activate to make the experience more intense. You're required to choose at least 3, but you can technically just choose all of them. For this run, I chose Somnambulant as an energy debuff that gives a small chance I wake up somewhere random when I sleep. Numbskull halves my experience gain, and Heavy-footed, which makes sneaking notably harder, and my shoes wear twice as fast. In retrospect, these were some of the easier debuffs to have on. If I could do this again, I would probably have a majority of them enabled. The base survival aspects were much easier than I remembered. As our naked self starts hobbling towards Samin, you may notice when I open my map, there's no pin to suggest where we are currently. This is a base feature of hardcore. I can ask NPCs for my current location and even use road signs, but I will need to hold a baseline bearing as we play through. I am pretty familiar with Trotsky region from my previous playthrough, but as you'll see, it's pretty easy to get lost. En route, I pass a few huts that are inhabited, and we are being heckled for our nakedness. As I make it to Samin, I try to find anything lying about out of sight. No luck. Unfortunately, I do come across an aggressive homeless man on the outskirts who chases me into the brush. I will admit, here and now, I did get lost. And if you saw my last video, I was coming off the verticality of Avowed, so I may have slid down a rock face thinking I could mantle a rock and completely shatter both my ankles. KCD2, as I will say many more times, is an immersive dream, but it does have its downsides. There is no magic quick fix to busted ankles when you're naked and afraid in the bush. I was slowly hobbling towards what I thought was the tavern on the lake, but I ended up at the Nomad camp. Little off. On my first run, my only interaction with this camp was with the Cuban soldiers down the road, so I thought it'd be fun to get a quest from here and become acquainted. I come across this Mario-looking gentleman who tells me about his missing daughter. I tell him I'll find her, and I am pointed towards the herbalist Bojena, who revives us at the start of the game. I try to plunder the camp before I venture off. Issue is, with no doors and an abundance of people gathered and speaking outdoors, it's not really a good time to rob them. Bojena isn't too far away, so I hug the coast when I stumble on a thug looting a dead body. Before I can pivot away, the thug sees me and tells me he's going to rob me. This will be the only time in this playthrough where being naked and lootless actually plays out as a benefit. In my brilliance, as he walks away, I decide to sneak up on this thug and knock him out. This goes about as well as you think it might, and it was all a dream.
Hey, you.
finally awake.
How many more times can I make this joke, by the way? Another fun fact about KCD2 is that there are no autosaves. Saving occurs in 3 different formats: certain quest scenario completions, when you log out, and when you drink a save cocktail or sleep in certain beds. These cocktails become very easy to attain eventually, but if you really dislike this, there are plentiful of easily accessible mods that bypass this requirement. I personally like it, but as you'll see, it's gonna bite me in the ass. On round 2, I bypass this gent entirely and speak with Bojena. It seems Marika, the daughter, is in a Romeo and Juliet situation. Samine, where her boyfriend is from, dislikes these gypsies, and the nomads dislike the people of Samine. There are some easy suspects in this budding mystery already, but Bojena points me towards a place on the outskirts of Trotsky Castle where they may be keeping their heads low. At this point, I know one thing. Walking across this map is going to suck. I need my horse. KCD2 does have fast travel, but not in hardcore, so a life without a horse will be brutal. Luckily, I remember where my horse got left after the tutorial, and this should be an easy pickup. Okay, I think this was patched. I cannot for the life of me convince this man that this is my horse, and he's asking for a whopping 60 coins. That isn't a lot, but also I have no coins, no clothes, and no weapons to ascertain more coin, so I'm a little frustrated. I'd rob people, but I never really learned the ins and outs on pickpocketing, so I'm in disarray on what are the next steps. So I opt for the easiest option. I wait until dark, hop on Pebble, and bounce. This seems too easy, so I check, and of course it isn't registered as mine. It turns out I cannot steal horses. This is in fact untrue, but I wasn't aware of that yet. So I keep looking around for some way to make some coin. I come across this man who wanted to roll dice and gamble. I smoked him the first 2 rounds, then got wiped on the 3rd and lost all I just gained. Don't gamble, kids. I give up and head south towards the Miller quest, as the wedding main story event has 2 options to get there. And since I've done the blacksmith one already, doing the Miller one this time around makes more sense. As I'm following the road, I see 2 men looting a corpse. Once again, naked and afraid, I go up an embankment and go through the bushes to skirt around them, and I think they smell me. It's a mad scramble, and surely I can make it to the Millers because I'm pretty sure my last save is at that nomads camp. I drop down a steep section and that loses them, but I'm still dashing. Then I get nearly to the Millers and look back. This motherfucker is taking the main road and is coming hard, so I run to the Miller. But alas, this motherfucker zergs me. Some mad dashing later, and I'm back in front of the Miller and I ask for work. He tells me to start out with some basic hard labor, lifting sacks of flour from shed to cart. He says I'll get paid per sack in the allotted time frame. This makes me giddy. I'll work a boring ass job for a few days, pay off my horse, and hopefully get some clothes. On my way to get like my 7th bag, I notice a few things on the counter in front of the bags. There are 5 lockpicks, and more notably, a dagger. A dagger in KCD2 isn't fully usable as a weapon, more so a resource that needs to be equipped to access stealth killing. So a great pickup for the future, and intriguing that this is just out and about. As I drop off what seems like the 20th bag of the day, the reveal that I was starting to expect happens. It seems the Miller has a shady side business of smuggling and thievery that he runs on the down low. I'm inducted as a recruit and get taught some new skills, and he mentions he has a fighting ring out back that will provide some extra cash. I don't think I'm getting paid for my sacks of flour anymore, so I'm gonna try this out. And I get whooped. I have no source of health regen at this point, so my only saving grace is to sleep it off. The Miller has a bed set aside for me in the attic, so I utilize it, and well, my perk kicks in. I'm officially on the other side of the map when I wake up. Now, one of my favorite things about map 1 is that Trotsky Castle can be seen from anywhere, thus making it some sort of North Star. Now, in this case, I woke up basically right in front of it, but the point stands nonetheless. As I get my bearings, I come across a man who has lost a letter and wants me to beat him up, so he has an excuse for the loss. After doing this, I get a nefarious idea. It's been about 4 hours so far. I've got no weapons, no clothes, and no horse. This man is already on the brink of life or death. Let's try out my new skills of takedowns and rob him. My heart was pounding, and of course I messed up, meaning he sees my face and thus he can notify the authorities, so I have to break the seal. I snap his neck, quick loot him, and start carrying him off the main trail so I can hide his body, because if this body was discovered and I was still in the area, I'd be wanted for questioning. I see a small broken down hut that has been deserted for years. This is perfect. I cautiously carry him over and dump him in the backside of it. This is some adrenaline boosting activities. I need to chill out. Or so I thought. This crazy man comes around the corner and my life flashes before my eyes. Not only does he see the body, he sees me above said body. And like that, I start the most comical chase ever. I have no weapons still, so I chase this crazy dude a mile, just punching him to death ever so slightly. Somehow, no one is on the main road to the castle, hustle this whole time, so I lumber him all the way back and dump his body with the others. I have 2 murders under my belt, but at least I won't be harassed for being naked anymore. I stop in Troskowitz to talk with the miller's apprentice who is being held there. The miller wants me to get some deed back for him that is currently under lock and key, and this man has some vital know-how of where it is. But I need to go to the bathhouse to pick up some clothing that makes stealth easier. As I arrive there, I figured it's time to get a new haircut, but I forgot that I'm broke. I then inquire to wash my new clothes, but once again, broke. So I wait for an opening, then I sneak upstairs and rob literally everything in the chest. Quest clothing included, but more notably, a club. I now have questionable clothing, a questionable weapon. It's time to get a questionable horse. I head to Samin for the 3rd time, but this time with a plan. I am getting my horse. How, you might ask? I will rob this little shit, then pay him with his own money. I wait outside until dark and sneak inside the house. I then rob every single person and item from inside this damn place. Now I will say, I wasn't expecting to get this much coin, but I left that house as a rich man with a total over 400 coin, and a few other things. I came back the next morning, walked over to the bastard, and bought my horse. Take note of my work of art. I took everything, his clothing included. Now I had a horse. Do you remember when you first let loose in GTA 5 to drive around in free roam? You just did loops around the island trying to soak it all in? Well, for the past 5 hours, I've been running around this map with a stamina debuff and shoes that kept on breaking, so I just started riding. I rode so long I nearly passed out. When I awoke, I started searching for the Mario Man's daughter. I follow the Nomad's quest to the rocky cliffs near Trotsky and come across a bloody trail that leads to Marika and her lover. He's gravely wounded as it seems that he was jumped by her brothers. I'm now tasked with solving this squabble. I take a rest at a local abandoned hut and the debuff strikes again. This time though, I wake up to a man with a treasure map. I ask him to kindly let me look at it. He scoffs and says no, I have to pay. Now I have a club, and I use said club. The issue is this man has much better stamina and one of the longest runs possible occurs, with him getting just outside of Troskowitz before I slay him and take the map for myself. I was fairly certain this would be the time that I was caught, but that time was not yet. I did learn how useless the club was, so I stopped by the weapon merchant in Troskowitz and pick up a staff, pitchfork, and a glaive. Based on my current base stats, I could only use the staff efficiently so far. I was feeling pretty good. I was on the up and up, though it was about to go downhill. Mario reveals to me that he is a scumbag and that after his sons beat up Marika's lover, one of them was captured and murdered by the townsfolk, whilst the other is being held by others. And good old dad needs me to rescue them before he helps his daughter. This is where my experience becomes Groundhog's Day as I become trapped in the infinite loop of my choices. At this point, I have next to no fight experience. My armor is stealth oriented and my weapon is a staff that's damage is negligible. It turns out the brother held in Semin is guarded by a man not willing to just give him up. Eventually, it comes to blows and KCD's combat comes into play. A lot of people dislike this combat as it's not the typical one you may find in modern combat games. Warhorse looks to make a more realistic combat formula, but the average consumer will likely be put off by this as it is somewhat realistically clunky. I enjoy it for what it is, and because I'm playing in hardcore mode, I don't get the UI prompts for when to attack and defend, amplifying the difficulty even more. Because it's more realistic, any fight where there's more than one enemy, you're at a severe disadvantage. In this situation, I have 2 coming from behind and this fella in front. So after multiple resets, I determine a funnel by utilizing the environment. Does anyone else notice that the staff is making a noise as if it's got a metal end that's puncturing skin? This bothers me. What makes this worse is my staff does next to no damage, so I spend a lot of time on this, but eventually we succeed in taking these 3 out and freeing the brother. He tells me that the woodcutters down the road have his dead brother strung to a tree, and here comes our next blockade. In our first fight, we had 3 men in a condensed homestead environment that I could maneuver. In this situation, there are like 6+ men in an open environment. Many deaths later, I come to terms that I can't actually kill these men straight on, funnel or not. As soon as the boss man hears me demanding the body's release, he calls for all of his men to put me down, so I take an underhanded route that really only works because of the Groundhog's Day time loop that I'm stuck in. I go to the loggers' camp and just attack and kill 2 of the men. This causes the others to panic and flee, and thus I'm free to grab the fallen brother and take him to his burial. After saving his son and burying his other, Mario Man still refuses to come to terms with his daughter. This pisses me off. This Mario-looking motherfucker has some old world pride clouding his judgment and has me performing family counseling free of charge. I don't think I can kill this whole camp, but I ain't questioning it at this point. Though I decide to shift my anger towards someone else, and I pay my friend in Samin a visit at midnight instead. we are about to put the crime systems to work. I sneak back into this horse seller's room and slit his throat. A problem arises immediately. It seems his wife notices, since they share the same bed. She surely saw my face, so I flee. I get confronted by bandits on the road, and I spend another enormous amount of resets learning more crucial combat techniques, like dashing under the arms they use to throw an attack for an immediate opening, and how quality of gear factors in mid-fight, like shielded folks can be broken down by utilizing repeated power attacks on said shield. Eventually I find myself back in Crawlspace, and as I'm offloading some gear I had just stolen, I get apprehended by the law. I'm panicking. Is this for the robberies around the country, or is this for one of the many murders under my belt at this point? Turns out it was just for one of those small robberies, and we get strung up in the middle of town. As I watch this cinematic, I remember that I have a jailbreak quest for this exact town. The reason I got all this training in stealth was to train me to steal this deed from the Crawlspace jail storage. This may be the most densely populated area yet. After a stupid amount of time trying to figure out how to get in, I find an entrance hidden in shadow. And this may be the adrenaline speaking, but this was way too easy. So not only did I get the deed, I also started robbing everyone in their sleep. Then I may have put poison in the communal dinner since that seemed fun, and since I was this far, what would happen if half the town's guards just died in their sleep? So I began stealth killing every single person inside. I was genuinely intrigued on how this would affect the day-to-day. Fortunately, I never got to see this play out as a random woman comes up the stairs in the middle of the night to catch me in the act and alerts everyone. I'm caught red-handed. My crime spree is over. It's all about to collapse on me, but it wasn't. It seems she was responding to the mass burglary I committed and not the murders, because they detained me for robbery and committed a public branding to permanently let people know of my crime. Before they even could have a whiff that I was involved in the mass execution in that building, I left town and my murder spree continued. People on the side of the road, workers in the fields, the tavern owner while on break. I was fully lost in pure evil gameplay. And finally I was caught. After 15 hours of time invested into the save, this version of Henry was sent to the gallows and sentenced to death for the crime of mass murder. And with that, let's talk about KCD2 after 1 year. After a whole year of seeing critics and popular audiences not take KCD2 seriously, my first reflection is I can see why now. As I mentioned at the start, I think retention on the game has a large fall off at the start. This game is dialogue heavy, has a combat system that is unlike the typical combat of modern games, set in a realistic historical setting, and most of all, it's very long. My first playthrough was 111 hours. This game 100% skews towards older audiences who have an intact attention span, have the time commitment to a world like this, and those of whom grew up with Bethesda-like games, with KCD2 feeling like the spiritual successor to this type of formula. Also, Czechia, they're very proud of this game. I absolutely loved my playthrough and regret not having more debuffs enabled from the start to heighten the realism and immersion. Also, not being able to interact with the Kuttenberg map was kind of a letdown. I had lots of experience in the Trotsky map in my first playthrough, and Kuttenberg's side quests were largely untouched by me. But that would have been a serious time commitment, and the goal was to experience this world again with hardcore as my focus. As I'll probably mention 100 more times, immersive sims are my bread and butter, especially when they come packed with RPG storytelling. You probably won't catch me in a truck driving simulator anytime soon, but give me an immersive environment in which narrative choices matter and I'm in love. One of the few things I took away from film school was 1, audio is king, and 2, elements that immerse me into a story heighten the emotion and experience tenfold. I may be the only film student in history who didn't like the French New Wave for this reason alone. I say this because of how real KCD2's world feels. The NPCs react to everything. I don't know how many times I had to tell people to piss off when they remarked about how I was naked, stinky, or had 2 busted ankles from falling off a cliff. The population is attentive. If you're acting suspiciously, they will store this and report you if a crime takes place around the same time that has no suspect. There were many moments when I was wanted because I was creeping around before a crime occurred and was the only one in the area. The crime system in general feels great. It's not perfect by any means, but it feels like the best interpretation of a real-life law system that I've experienced in any game to date. This system's depths are largely unexplored by those like me whose first playthrough sees Henry as a noble character. Thus no crime or experience with its depth is ever seen, but this just elevates this living world. Then, the hardcore elements heighten the realism and immersion to another level. Basic level checks that can be easily reached for conversations are harder to achieve. Your character actually has to work to be good at something, and a map without an updating marker for your location and a lack of fast travel really highlights the size but also the density of this world. I learned significantly more about the nuances of combat in hardcore in a few hours than my 111 than our main run where Master Strikes were the go-to. This game isn't perfect, and without a doubt, it's got a niche audience. I stand by all the negatives from my original video, but I think the innovation to this style of game and how much detail is packed into this from all aspects, I truly think it deserved more recognition than it did last year. I feel a bit sad that in most discussions about best games of the year, a majority of popular game critics only acknowledged the game after livestream chats were posting it on repeat, and at best it seemed like a majority hadn't given it much time past its tutorial to have a verdict of slightly better than middling. I hope Warhorse isn't discouraged by this, because in a world where producers want to make products for everyone and thus no one in particular, Warhorse's innovation and focus on this type of game is commendable. Whether they continue with this universe for a third installment or try another setting or just move more into fantasy, I'm excited to see what the studio has next. In the end, I hope that throughout this I conveyed enough why I love this game so much, why it is my favorite game of 2025, and why it's one of my favorite games of all time. It's that time again that I want to remind you that a like goes a long way for a small channel like mine that just wants to keep making videos that they love. It shows the content is working and also tells YouTube that this isn't some of the millions of AI slop that gets uploaded daily, so they might give me a chance. If you like this content, check out my last video on Avowed. I checked the game out after a year of staying away from it due to poor reviews online, and I actually enjoyed it somewhat. If you want to hear my full review of KCD2 from last year, I highly recommend it for a more detailed look at all its elements, or subscribe for my next video. I'll be taking a slight genre change, but bear with me. I want to revisit my favorite game of all time after 19 years, Halo 3. I think that game is near perfection, and that might be weighted heavily by nostalgia. We'll see. That will drop in 2 weeks from now. If you have some ideas of worthy games to revisit, let me know below as I'm updating my personal list slowly. My name is EasyBreak. Toodaloo.